Hi, Chris Duff at Serious Land Capital, Vacant Land Funding Partner. So today I wanted to share another lesson about that lemon barely avoided purchasing and funding in Washington State with a ton of lessons involved there. So there were a couple previous podcasts recognizing how to spot seller warning signs, also how to conduct even deeper due diligence regarding possible wetlands impact. Now I wanted to talk about really figuring out additional possible access issues. So, just to catch you up in case you didn't listen to those other podcasts, this was roughly a 5 acre narrow parcel that looked like a lowercase L that was in a highly developed area just north of Seattle. Looked to be a really premium spot that was previously purchased for about $250,000, then sold via tax auction for a pittance a few years ago, and we had it under contract for a very attractive price with an aggressive seller. And so I mentioned, okay, there's wetlands issues that came up, and the next piece was the actual road access. Access is like, it's hard to say what is the most important DD item when it comes to land, but having access to a road might be the most important out of all of them. It might have the most dramatic impact on pricing compared to virtually any other characteristic of a certain property. And so, in podcast form, it's going to be a little difficult to describe here. But basically, if you can imagine there being a capital U of a major subdivision area, and our 5 acre narrow property was kind of sitting right in the middle of that U. And it looked like at first glance, even second glance, that the southern boundary had direct access to that road that the major subdivision had. So it was like, okay, yeah, this is super basic. It's going to have all the public utilities and so forth available to it. This is going to be super cut and dry. And it's like a way larger parcel. It's 5 acres compared to, quarter acre to a half acre lots that surround it. However, when we dove deeper into this property, and I credit initially our third party due diligence consultant who does our full reports on this, was indicating, hey, I think this thing's going to be landlocked here. Not certain about the road access. What are you talking about? I didn't even, this wasn't even flagged for me when I first reviewed this property. And we were operating under this assumption for weeks that we had a real premium property we were going to buy for like $70K. Some builder interest was already like north of $200K. We were going to set up a possible near transactional deal with equity upside. Like, you can't ask for anything better. And so when I took a deeper look at the property today, and right on that southern boundary, there was a tiny sliver of a gap between where that public access road was and the bottom, the very bottom boundary of the property. Sometimes you can write those off because, like, a lot of county parcel maps, they might be inaccurately mapped, or some of the lines just don't fully line up with the road. And so I didn't really question it, but when you actually clicked on that small sliver, and we're talking like sub 10 feet of space between the road and where the southern boundary of that property, we're really talking a sliver here. But if you clicked on that little small area between it, it showed, hey, there's actually another whole parcel. And it was land ID showing, it's parcel pending. We don't know who the owner was. So it's like, okay, we don't know the situation with this land. Maybe it's public access. It wouldn't be an issue to cross over that little sliver on the south side. But then looking at it more and realizing, okay, yeah, the surrounding neighborhood, none of them have those issues with their parcel lines touching the street or having any little gaps there. So it doesn't seem to be like county parcel line related issues. There might actually be something here. And so we actually dug further into the county records, And again, I credit the land investor working with us to find all of this info, but there was documented attempts around 20 years ago where the previous owner had tried to apply for access for a driveway to cross that little sliver of land, and the county denied it. And they said, oh, it's something for county related trail or utility easement or something. They actually provided their rationale. I was reading over the docs. Man, it's very surprising. They didn't want to approve anything like this, but that is not a good precedent to set. So it's like, man, if we bought this here where we thought we were going to have like golden southern boundary access right into a premium neighborhood, and it was already denied in the past, do we really want to take the risk of trying to gamble for that again? And so that was a huge catch right there that I flat out missed. I just was making blanket assumptions, wasn't looking closely enough. So that's a lesson right there. Anytime there's little gaps, like really, really, really be certain, make the right calls into the various authorities to figure out what's going on in a situation like that before you get caught with, possibly a landlocked property. And it turns out there was still legal access. However, it was from the northern boundary of the property, needing an extensive easement to a public road much farther to the north. So technically there was legal access, but there was no easement already, or no driveway or anything in place to actually access the property. So that obviously was super annoying. It's going to make, utilities that much more expensive to line up, especially power and so forth. And I know I talked about the wetlands issue in the previous podcast. So that basically relegated the only buildable area to the very southern tip of the property. So that just added, you're kind of kicking the property while it was down, losing the analogy here. But into the frying pan, or out of the frying pan and into the fire. You're getting my drift here. It was like, okay, we're adding insult to injury. That is the phrase that I was looking for. Forgive me as my brain was continuing to operate. But essentially, that was going to make the building site, the only viable building site for the property, about a half mile away from road access. I mean, that's a super expensive driveway, utility installation. That's going to add, tens of thousands of dollars of extra cost to build out this property. It's like, oh man, this is so much hair to deal with here. And, our broker, who was already reaching out to builders, like, he didn't realize this at the time. We didn't realize this at the time until, very recently, reviewing the property. But, at least there was legal access. We were trying to figure out, what else can we do to still sort out whether we could sell this property. And that's going to be a story for another podcast. But in this case, it was a lesson of like, okay, don't ever, out of any property characteristic, don't ever make too many assumptions about legal and physical access to a property, because if you are off on that, it will destroy your economics and you're going to be in for a world of hurt. So this one was very tricky to figure out. It needed a super close eye to determine that, hey, there's actually some questions here. I missed it the first time I looked at the property, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, and it didn't become clear to me until today. But again, better late than never. I'm still have beginner mentality and a humility to how I approach reviewing land deals. You can never be too careful. You can never learn too many lessons. So, I learned a lot of lessons today, and, it's only going to make me better going forward. So hopefully this helps you with your own review of properties. SeriousLand.capital for any of your funding needs. Zero cost review of your land deals at Land Dealer Diligence Facebook group, and landpricer.ai. For the most simple and accurate way to price land. Subscribe and share. Talk to you next time. Take care. Bye.